it's actually quite alarming. And again, one of the reasons why Autism Swim exists. So children on the autism spectrum are 160 times more likely to drown
Ooh.
compared to their neurotypical peers. And we found that 91% of our families had left the services because they were unable to understand their child's
I think
needs.
another common misunderstanding is probably about what the NDIS will pay for and what it won't pay for. Because,
Oh,
please
yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to be corrected,
yeah,
but my
yes.
distinct understanding is that the NDIS doesn't pay for swimming lessons.
The transformative powers that water had on this client that had some complex things going on for him. And she noticed that when he was in the environment of water, that he would just flourish.
He was just a bit of a prick because he actually dunked my son head under the water. He dunked his head under, and ever since that experience, I don't want to do that ever again. Right? So
Mm,
I wish I'd known about if Dippers was existing, because of
mm.
course whoever's facilitating that would be so much better informed.
Going to the beach was just the biggest chore. Going through the Dippers program and doing it every week and just practicing that slow, gentle practice really helped us to the point where we successfully had a beach family holiday at the end of last year. But essentially, what you were saying is that out of five people walking through your door, you're slamming the door shut to one of those five people.
Welcome to the Steadway NDIS podcast. My name's Chris Hall, your host, and today I've got Antoinette Spear with me, who is the General Manager of Autism Swim. Being autistic myself, I'm an autistic son that's on the NDIS, and just generally being a parent to be aware about what works for neurodiversity. I'm thrilled to have Antoinette on the podcast today to talk about what Autism Swim does, but also how parents and children can be empowered with, sensory compatible environments, etc. So, Antoinette, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on.
It is an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. So, Antoinette, I know you've been with the organization for a couple of years as general manager, but what's the origin story of Autism Swim? What was the original spark of inspiration for it to be created?
Absolutely. So, Autism Swim was founded by the incredible Erica Gleason, who is a senior specialist behavior support practitioner. She is just an all-round incredible human being, and she's got decorated with all sorts of medals, like an Order of Australia medal. So, she's pretty amazing. But probably the thing that is most well, the biggest thing that comes from Erica is her passion and her heart and her motivation to change and be inspired by doing better in the world. So she was supporting a client of hers, and she noticed the transformative powers that water had on this client that she was supporting that had some complex things going on for him. And she noticed that when he was in the environment of water, that he would just flourish and his support would just flow really well from that. So it sent Erica down an incredible rabbit hole to actually research around the effects of water and autism and neurodivergence. Um, and it also led Erica to discovering that it's a real gap in terms of our knowledge. There's not a lot of research out there about the effects of water and autism. In saying that, Autism Swim was founded 10 years ago. Since then, there has been more research and papers being emerging from that. But the biggest gap she identified was that a lot of aquatic environments, as you alluded to in the intro, the sensory elements of aquatic environments can both be, attractive and inspiring and alluring for our neurodivergent population, but also there are risks and there are challenges that we have within our aquatic environments. So, this is how Autism Swim came to be, was to plug this gap.
Love it, love it. And it really makes you think about what I do as a parent, but also what I do as a provider in terms of core supports. I think being neurodiverse informed truly is about understanding.
Mm,
If you take the behavior support lens, you can say every behavior is a communication, right?
correct.
So there's that. And of course, it's called a spectrum for a reason. Like I have,
Mm.
I hate the term ASD, right? But still, I have
Yeah.
ASD one, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's me. But then you might have someone that, I'm clearly quite hyperverbal. But then you might have someone that might have selective mutism or be completely nonverbal, all that kind of stuff. And just because you're nonverbal, either in a moment or in general, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you don't have feelings and desires and goals and things you want to
Mm.
do. And if you're finding it hard
Mm.
to get that out or to communicate it or to get some
Mm.
relief from just the daily frustration,
Mm.
of communication or
Mm.
experience, whatever it is from a sensory thing, then yeah, it's so, I guess my point is it's so crucial to set up the environment right for people because that's when they don't need to communicate. They just get to enjoy, you get to enjoy that.
I couldn't agree more with that. That's and I guess as well, just going back to the how did Autism Swim come to be and identifying that gap, what Erica had discovered through her journey of forming Autism Swim was that a lot of aquatic providers are offering services, whether that be hiring out pools or learning how to swim or offering services that you would with both children and adults. Knowing how to do that bit really well, but then not feeling empowered or supported in how to support broader populations in that. And when we're looking at inclusion in aquatics, it's such a big catch-all term.
Mhm.
Inclusion could be anything from physical disabilities. It could be anything from culturally and linguistically diverse communities. It's just so broad. It could be genders. But neuro-inclusive aquatic spaces is really the space that we work in and that we help to equip. Our one of our underlying philosophies is that if we can create environments where everyone feels safe, supported, included, it not only benefits our neurodivergent community, but it can also have that amplifying effect to help everyone feel included and supported, which I'll
Definitely.
unpack some examples down later on
I
as
want to
well.
hear all about it, yeah, because I know that
Mm.
what you offer is, I believe, one of the world's first neuro-inclusive certifications in terms of
Yeah.
aquatics. Um,
Yes.
I guess if we compare that certification for neurodiverse
Mm.
inclusivity, how does that contrast and compare to a traditional, swim teacher training, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So taking a step back, we support aquatic providers that are so not only the Learn to Swim, so like the swim centers, but we also support allied health providers and also people within our community. So we get a lot of school teachers, for example, who have a swim school program and they're learning support officers or parents themselves who can't access anything, so they take it upon themselves to help teach and empower their children. So when I talk about aquatic providers, that's who I mean is that cohort. And we're looking at the training that each of these respective groups will typically experience. So for a swim teacher to get their swimming teaching qualification, they're really learning those foundations in the mechanics of how to deliver Learn to Swim. They're looking at stroke development. They're looking at those more technical elements. They might cover some things over, working with, building rapport or interpersonal relationships. But again, it's that sort of more generalized, broader population. So typically speaking, within a traditional qualification, that neuro inclusion elements not always listed or mandated as part of their qualification elements.
Yep.
Looking in the allied health space, absolutely that neuro affirming and that neuro inclusion element is sort of well, we would expect as a community that it is part of a lot of the training of our allied health professionals. But in saying that, a lot of the training that our allied health professionals undertake don't is not specific or nuanced to the aquatic environment only. So this is where the certification helps bridge that gap. And then when we're looking at those more community and informal supports, then people are coming at it from different angles. What's really exciting to see is that, especially in my time being here for the 2 years that I've been here, is that it's day by day. The demands of the community and the standards within our community have lifted all around us.
Mhm.
Parents are now feeling more and more empowered because they're getting information from sources like podcasts, social media. They're more connected, I feel, within knowing, hey, is this right? And so what I'm noticing is aquatic providers uh, have to change and have to meet the needs and the standards of the community because community expectations have lifted around them. So it's not acceptable or it's not enough to be able to say for aquatic providers to be able to say, look, little Timmy that you've brought to the lesson today, I don't think that we're a right fit anymore. You might want to explore another provider. The community knows that actually there's nothing wrong with Timmy. There's something wrong with the environment here going on. We need to do something about what's going on around us. Let's work together for solutions. So this is, I guess, a reason why providers are seeking out certifications and information and resources from providers like us to help them.
I love that. I love that. And of course, there's so many different dimensions of awareness. It could be, of
Mm.
course, sensory related to, I'd say, sound and light in particular.
Yep.
But
Yep.
there are, to use a clinical term, there's a term
Mm.
in, often psychology or sometimes health
Mm.
called comorbidities. And it sounds very morbid,
Yeah.
comorbidities. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
that means is there can be parallel health conditions or
Yeah.
disabilities that
Yeah.
statistically, not all, they
Yeah.
live by themselves, so to speak, but they can
Yes.
overlap with the autistic experience,
Correct.
right? So, for
Correct.
example, we've had clients with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a
Yes.
hypermobility, right?
Yes.
Very common. And a bit people, sometimes people with
Yeah.
ADHD or autism, they go, "Look, I can bend my wrist this far," and you go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, that's really
Yeah.
fast."
Let's stop
Um,
that. Yeah.
yeah, but I suppose that's an example of what an instructor
Mhm.
might need to be aware of.
Yeah.
You can have, when one is autistic, you can sometimes have something called PDA, which means pathological demand avoidance.
Yeah.
That's something that you've got to be very aware about that in terms of how you make a
Mm.
request because you have to maintain autonomy, right? So the way that you even ask a question to the person that you're
Yeah.
teaching they need to feel like they're in charge, right? Would you like to do
Correct.
this
Yeah.
or that? It's not do
Yeah.
this because then they go, no.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And
Cool.
and yeah, learning the techniques of controlled choice as well and
Right.
learning unpacking language and language choice as when interacting. So yeah, nailed it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Does that? Yeah, I'm sure you guys. Yeah, kind of. Do you
Yeah.
kind of do you go into that realm, or do you stick just
A
in the lane of
100%.
autism?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 100%. So unpacking the certification itself. So there is an entire module dedicated to. So you use the term comorbidities, which is
Yeah.
absolutely a term that is known and used when we're looking, I guess, with that medical model lens or that research lens.
Yep.
But then if we're applying the social model, we refer to it. And Autism Swim does default to the social model of support and
Okay.
using social model of support with language. So we call it co-occurring conditions and support planning.
Great.
So
Yeah.
understanding what else is going on for someone. And a lot of it starts, look at the person first. Start with
Mm.
the person and have a look because how you might present
Yeah.
is going to be very differently to how the other Chris down the road is going to present, right? So
Mm.
um, so yeah, starting with that person first lens is just so important.
I like co-occurring. That in itself is more inclusive, isn't it? Is it more compassionate?
Yeah.
It's a person coming from the perspective of the individual.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. What are some of the most common misunderstandings about what it
Wow.
means to do all of this? In terms of the
Yeah.
neurodiverse informed swimming.
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest barrier when we're talking with new aquatic providers who might have a curiosity about understanding this, um, their biggest challenge is they come from two sort of schools of thought. There's this one school of thought which is um, this this is just I want to get this right. I want to get it right. I don't want to go out and sell myself as an Autism Swim approved provider if I'm not getting this perfectly right or doing it right from day one or I want to know all the information. I want to, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it 100% well. And then there's almost this hesitance to actually get started because, like, oh, actually, but I'm not an expert, or there's self-doubt, or this element of, oh, but we're not perfect, or we're not. So let's just not go down that path. Let's
Yeah.
just stay within the mainstream and not say that we're um uh not broaden out into that area. So they kind of have this element of self-doubt, or so my best advice for those that sort of cohort is just get started.
Mm.
Start somewhere. Start and learn. Start, learn and test. And just keep that open mind. And often you'll find those providers actually do a lot of things, a lot of the strategies that we suggest or that we help with. Um, so that's a great thing. Or the flip side of it is, no, we will only focus on the mainstream because I don't get paid enough to do the specialized, or it's too expensive to specialize with one-on-one, or my demand for my traditional mainstream learn to swim class is enough
Hmm.
that I can send people away. It's not going to hurt my bottom line.
Mm.
Um, to which my response is, that's great, but essentially what you were saying is that out of five people walking through your door, you're slamming the door shut to one of those five people.
Right.
That's such a unsustainable way to look at your organization, and the way that you're doing, from a commercial perspective.
Mm.
You're looking at how much it's costing you, but you're forgetting to look at your opportunity cost of,
Hmm.
well, actually, I'm limiting my services to only a narrower part of the broader market.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's so sometimes you have to address or talk to people with in terms of dollars and numbers and logic, and other people you talk to them in terms of those more emotive conversations.
Yes. I think another common misunderstanding is probably about what the NDIS will pay for and what it won't pay for. Because,
Oh,
please
yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to be corrected,
yeah,
but my
yes.
distinct understanding is that the NDIS doesn't pay for swimming lessons.
That is a correct.
Yeah.
So there's a couple parts to this. So number one, if you actually look at the guidelines, swimming lessons doesn't really appear as
Mm.
as a line item, as a thing.
Yeah.
Um, I can give you two scenarios. So if I was to say with my child, who is on the NDIS, if I was to say to him, or if I was to say, I've got a support worker, that support worker is going to support community access
Yes.
either in my backyard pool or at a beach or somewhere where there's water.
Hmm.
Yep, that's community access. That's achieving, all the goals that I have. I can ladder
Mm.
them up into the goals that I have in my plan. Tick, 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 we're happy. If I said it to my local area coordinator, my son can't swim. I can't send him to a mainstream school for these reasons.
Yeah.
He's behind his peers. He can't do his swimming carnival, like, all those reasons. My local area coordinator will say, yes, Antoinette, but every other parent pays for swimming lessons. Why can't you?
Yeah.
So, this is parental
So
responsibility.
then this hits barriers, right? Because I'm assuming that it does tend to cost more, right? Because when my son was diagnosed, it was one of the first things we asked. We said, "Oh, can we do
Yeah.
swimming lessons?" Because I know it'd be really good. And no,
Yes.
you know,
No, it's that. However, if I said my son is drawn to water, um, I fear that it will be fatal. I'm concerned that his sense of danger, or if I was to reframe the concerns that I had, in ways in which it would elevate the seriousness or the risks, it could potentially be reframed and looked at in a different light. Um, in addition to that, if I was to align therapeutic goals align with access to water, it might open up my chances to access water therapy there. I think the key part of all of this is this conversation, or at least what I'm hoping my listen or our listeners don't do, is that I don't necessarily want this to be used as like cheat codes for how to get NDIS or NDIS
Not at
funding,
all,
but
but just to
rather
clarify, are
to,
you saying that you can
yeah.
sometimes get it paid for in the right
Look, there
circumstance?
are so again, if it's aligned to therapeutic goals,
Yep.
so things like aqua OT or water therapy, or sometimes there are service providers in the allied health space who offer things in water. If it's aligned to community goals, that say support workers can help support with, to access aquatic environments, that's one thing. The actual learning how to swim, stroke development, that sort of thing, it's I'm seeing less and less of it, and it's not very frequently occurring. So my call to action, or the thing that I would love the audience to think about, is think about aquatic and the way that aquatic services that you can access. That's not just learn how to swim. Think about the broader things, broader applications of water and community, and see, can you get exposure or access or assistance in helping in those other areas. That might be a way that could be covered under the NDIS, but answering definitively, no, NDS does not fund swimming lessons that I
Yeah.
know of.
Yeah, and also, by the way, for the benefit of the listeners, if anyone ever has those types of questions more generally about what the NDIS will pay for, we've got a free AI tool on steadway.com.au where you can literally ask it, will the NDIS pay for it? And it'll tell you the answers based on the rules.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, yeah, thank you. So again, just to dig into that one very quickly, just let me go into the microcosm for a sec because that's what
Yeah.
my brain does. Um,
Mhm.
are there ever any instances where an OT would offer a really bespoke service? Will they go, actually, there's a because I know that occupational therapy can
Mm.
be, particularly in under 18 NDIS
Yeah.
plans. Um,
Yes.
I think about my own sons, like it would be like
Mm.
stated support therapies, like
Yeah.
generally, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's like restricted to OT or whatever, but sometimes it's broad. So if there was an OT that said, "Yeah, I'll take you for a session in the pool," can an OT literally take someone into the pool like that?
Sorry, my internet just glitched out. Could you just quickly repeat that?
That's okay. Oh,
Sorry.
it's all right. I was just saying, can there be a niche situation where an OT specifically will say, "I'll take you for an hour in the pool," for example?
Yeah, so absolutely. Aqua OT is definitely a thing, and it's a
Okay.
really successful way to deliver therapeutic goals. The aquatic environment, if we think about a child's primary occupation,
hmm
it's play, it's fun,
hmm
and we're thinking about settings in which OT can be delivered. So there are, depending on what goals are, there's definitely things like, getting into the pool. So, what do we wear? How do we pack? How to work with sensory things. So it might be the feeling of goggles on our face. It might be the transition from dry to wet. It might be the transition from wet to dry.
hmm
Um, so there are so many elements that we can think about. And if we think about OTs working on goals, for example, things like just water in general, brushing teeth, washing hair, sometimes working on those things around the home, and then progressing it, say, into a pool or a pool setting as that next step. That's one way that we can do, or one way that Aqua OT can benefit.
Hmm.
But then also things like other like turn taking, socialization. Like you can pick so many amazing benefits from being in that aquatic environment.
100%. I mean, again, I know that OT sessions, especially with under 18s, like it's teaching all of those things you just said. It could be other things like
Mm.
reciprocity,
Yep.
conversational back and forth,
Yeah.
trying to follow through on, the life skills of, as you say, getting dressed. Like it is occupational therapy in so many ways, actually. So
Yeah.
God, Aqua
Yeah.
OT, that's got a ring to it. Someone needs to register aquaot.com.au once we're ready.
It's been done. It's been done.
Ah,
There's
good.
definitely lots of, and this is a plug for Autism Swim. If you are looking
Yeah,
for an Autism Swim approved provider, so
yeah.
that is a provider that has gone through our training, has got that little badge to say, yep, they're legit. Head to autismswim.com.au under our finder provider, pop your postcode in, and
Yep.
you can find local providers in your area. So
Oh,
yeah,
I love
how
that.
good's that?
I
Yeah.
love that. That's really empowering for parents in particular, as well as providers.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning it.
Oh, my
Okay.
pleasure.
Yeah. So, what about like, we're talking about boosting confidence and independence, right?
Mm,
Have you got any kind of
mm.
success stories that you could talk to, where again, being in the water has really actually helped?
Yeah, 100%. So, alongside, so just taking a step back, rather, Autism Swim's a charity. So we benefit from having or taking impact as part of our this is why we exist, is to help make the community better. Alongside our certification, we also run a program called DIPPERS. DIPPERS is a modified NIPPERS program teaching beach safety and surf awareness to our participants. And we're right in the middle of our dipper season at the moment. We run across 4 locations in New South Wales, and I can see firsthand families and dippers participants who are just having extraordinary success being through this 8-week program. It's led by a clinician, so either an occupational therapist or a behaviour support practitioner. It's a small group of participants, up to 15 participants, and they usually have a one-on-one or a 2-to-1 ratio. Um, I'd love to use my case as an example to illustrate just how powerful this is. So my son went through the Dippers program last year, and we just found as a family of 5, so I've got 3 children and my husband, as a family of 5, going to the beach was just the biggest chore. It would just be every beach session would just end in tears by one or all, or probably me. Just with just the overwhelm. We pack everything. We're dealing with things like we don't like the heat, we don't like sand sticking to our feet, we don't like lots of things. That is we being my son. And going through the Dippers program and doing it every week and just practicing that slow, gentle practice really helped us to the point where we successfully had a beach family holiday at the end of last year. And it was a success because of that slow, gentle training and support and exposure. It also taught me as a parent that actually this can be done, and it never thought that. I just wrote that off as just one of those, the collateral damage that comes with having a neurodivergent family, that the beach is a no-go zone for us. But actually, it is a can-go zone, which is exciting for us. But then in addition to that as well, it's helped teach him life skills around keeping safe at the beach and how to how far we can go and what to do if we're in danger. And so there's just the power of it has just been enormous for us.
I really love that. Takes me back. My son's about to turn 10, right? It takes me
Yeah,
back
yeah,
to, I don't know, I say 5 years ago, when Nippers started, right? And he went to the first few weeks of Nippers, and there was a parent that, unfortunately, he was just a bit of a prick because he actually dunked my head son under the water. The bit where
Oh,
you kind of
yeah.
sorry, not the appropriate language, but sod it.
Oh no.
Like often the nippers they'll go out and do a little
Yes.
swim around the
Yes.
water safety
Yeah,
instruction as
yeah,
part of the
yeah.
drill, like run here and swim around and come back.
Yeah.
Anyway, he dunked his head under, and ever since that experience, I don't want to do that ever again. Right, so
Mm,
I'm only bringing it as a relatable story of I wish I'd known about if Dippers was existing, because of
mm,
course whoever's facilitating that would be so much better informed.
yeah,
And they might have
yeah.
avoided things like that because it's a crucial life skill living in Australia with all the beaches that we're blessed with.
Absolutely. And again, it's that my son definitely falls in that category of being too much for one setting, but not enough for another setting. He really falls into in between. And for him having that help with that one-on-one, it's someone that's not me or my husband, which is again another big thing for him as well. Um, but I also notice it with other participants that we have. They're all at varying journeys in terms of their being in the environment of the beach. Being that we have some of them who bolt straight for the water because it's fun and exciting and it's inviting as well, the water. And we're learning skills around. We ask for an adult, or we let a grown up or an adult know that we're going in first, and we're practicing that. And then we've got the other end where we've got some people who are really cautious, and that there's never any expectation that we have to go in on day one. We have some participants who might spend 7 sessions, not just, getting literally just getting their big toe wet. And then, in the last 10 minutes of week 8, they are, up to their waist. And, there's usually tears in people's eyes, celebrating how much of an achievement that is. But a key thing about dippers is that it's all well and good for us to learn swimming skills in a swimming pool.
Hmm.
But one of our key challenges, and one of the risks that elevates our risk of drowning for those on the autism spectrum, is that generalization of skills between one context and into another. So we can learn how to swim and float and hold our breath underneath the water in a swimming pool, but applying those same skills, say in a beach or in someone else's pool or in a pool that's a different pool from where we usually swim, that's where the challenges come. So generalizing those skills in different contexts is really important.
That's crucial. I believe that you guys have got some statistics on that in terms of
Yeah,
what the risk of drowning rate is for the cohort of the autistic community.
yeah. It is. It's actually quite alarming, and again, one of the reasons why Autism Swim exists. So children on the autism spectrum are 160 times more likely to drown
Oof.
compared to their neurotypical peers. So
God.
again, those risk factors include that generalization of skills.
Hmm.
It also includes lack of access to accessing learn to swim or environments where it is where there are aquatic environments. There's an incredible research paper that was recently compiled, and some of the factors from the preparedness of aquatic providers included parental factors. So transferring those fears that parents sometimes have, or those limitations that sometimes that unconscious bias that parents might have in I myself do things like I didn't tick yes to my son swimming in the swimming carnival because I thought, oh no, he can't swim 50 meters. Lo and behold, in his swimming lesson, his swimming teacher proudly said, look, he's swimming 50 meters, he can do it. And here I am knowing what I know, and I'm again projecting my concerns or fears because I want to set him up for success and not failure, but I'm actually doing the opposite
It's
in
so
that.
relevant, isn't it? I really
Yeah,
do get it. Like my kids are at primary still, and
yeah,
they do a great job. They've got a sensory room. They make accommodations. Like,
yeah,
they from the primary school perspective, they're doing really well. But that parental thing's very real, isn't it? Because like we know, for example, that the average sport carnival day for our kids is it just doesn't work. They don't want to do it. It's overwhelming. They can't participate. Da 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 da. Fill in the blank. But it then leads to the other side of the equation where you can hold people
yeah.
back, right? Because you go like, oh, that's too
Mm,
much for, young
yeah,
Tim or whatever it is, like,
yes.
he doesn't cope with that. But then it stops them from, yeah, it's very easy to do as a parent, it is very easy to have the extreme end of the scale is wrapping cotton wool, don't expose to the world.
Uh, It's so easy. And I
And
think
I've been
that's
there. I
part
get
of
it,
it.
yeah.
I'm always there. I think that's a lot of it is part of as parents, we have to think about every possible scenario and every possible what that scenario is going to lead to, because that's just how we're conditioned. We're just conditioned to always be on hyper alert to preempt things. Um, so yeah, so getting back to why drowning and the elevation of risk, they are contributing factors. alongside not having access to opportunities. So part of our mission at Autism Swim is to help enable our community to actually find services that provide neuro-inclusive services. Um, and so that's a big thing for us. We conducted a survey a couple of years ago where we asked parents were they satisfied with the offerings that their providers were giving for their children, and we found that 91% of our families had left the services because they were unable to understand their child's needs and also meet their needs as well. So we know that a lot of families are just opting out of the learn to swim or participating in aquatic opportunities just because it's just too hard. That it's just it's we'll put it on hold and they never revisit it, or it just never happens.
And I think that, the kind of the lens that I like to come at it from a parenting perspective is that, I only realized I was autistic myself when my son was diagnosed. I looked in the mirror and went, look, that's daddy too. I got
Mhm.
diagnosed at 40, 2.5 years ago. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Woo!
Yeah.
And it's a journey in itself, right? It's an
Mm,
unpacking, it's an unmasking, it's all of that. And what I
mm,
know from own lived experience is that it doesn't matter or not whether I'm autistic or whatever, but when it comes to parenting, one
mm.
way or another, there's extra levels of duress and stress and all that
Yeah.
stuff that happen because I think that parents are hyper vigilant and because they're trying
Yeah.
to protect and they're worried about what can happen. So, could we unpack that a little bit more about, we've talked
Yeah.
about training trainers and dippers and
Yeah.
all that. Those are
Yeah.
the people implementing. But
Yeah.
what's the kind of autism swim connection to parents and this type of
Yeah.
lens or understanding?
Yeah. I know the demand is just enormous. So, as
Hmm.
a charity, our resources and what we can offer to our communities is essentially based on our funding that we receive and what we can provide. But I just know that in fact, I was email conversation with a parent this morning saying her line in her email was, her son is 5, and she said, I only find out about services. There's no handbook or directory or thing. I only find it through just these happy series of happy accidents. She just happened to read a local newspaper article promoting the Dippers program, and she was like, "Oh, my son needs to be in that." And she said, "I feel like I'm missing out on all the things because we just don't know." So, when I speak to a lot of families and sort of apply my mum lens, and I'm not Antoinette from Autism Swim, I'm just, my children's mum. And I'm having conversations with parents in the community. A lot of them say, I wished I had, or I wish I could access some help. In fact, there's a mutual connection that Chris, that you and I both know, where that person was also seeking support for their child, and and again, it's that we just don't know where to look or where to turn. So this is something that Autism Swim is desperate to plug the gaps in. And my dream is to one day have more resources freely available to families, to be able to help empower families and parents and caregivers and support workers with more understanding of how to navigate aquatic environments, things that we can be doing as families and parents as well to enable opportunities, and also, more importantly, how to have fun. But on a more serious note, something that we are very proud to have available to families is our wandering and elopement drowning prevention toolkit, which we, as we know, within the autism community, particularly with our younger children. So we know the statistics are, I think it's age 5 or 6 is the highest risk for wandering and elopement. Is what to do when a child goes missing. We know that you just have to read a headline on any given day, and there's usually a story about a drowning, and then it's followed by, person was of a young age on the autism spectrum. So we know that it happens, that providing resources for families for what to do when someone goes missing and knowing what they can do, the same way that we provide CPR training for families, the what to do when someone goes missing training is vital for families and the community as well.
Absolutely. I suppose, like, does Autism Swim like position itself as a peak body on the subject, or do you see
Yeah.
yourself as a charity? Because I think you do. Yeah, great.
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept. So now
Hmm.
we're getting into board level discussions, but it's
Oh
definitely
yes.
that conversation. So we do have, we're very proud and to represent the community at conversations. So just last year was at the Royal Lifesaving Drowning Prevention Summit, where we were able to share and represent the voices of people on the autism spectrum. Um, Coming back to my very earlier point around when we're talking about inclusion, neuro inclusion typically gets lumped in to
Mm,
those, those broader categories. So,
mhm,
as I would love for us is a more broader community. I would love for the NDIS to recognize that um, drowning being the leading cause of death. I'd love
mm,
for children. I'd love for things like the National Autism Strategy that got released
mm,
last year. It was all
mm,
around the health and well-being outcomes for
mm.
mostly for adults, but didn't look at life expectancy or those sort of more health-related prevention um, uh, outcomes. So,
Mhm.
that was a brilliant opportunity that was missed that could have been attributed to, say, funding swimming lessons or drowning prevention support for children on the autism spectrum.
Mm.
So yes, answering your question about peak body, definitely we do represent and do have a seat in the table in places, but we can definitely be louder and more vocal. It's just resources and funding that is preventing us being that voice
Correct.
that we need to be.
Correct. Oh, there's so many things that I've got two avenues I want to go down. You've got how you
Mm,
get the message out. That's one avenue. And then you've also
mm,
got how can resources be more strategically shared? I suppose like on that
mm,
latter one, since you are a peak body, like I think that what I hope is that you got touch points. I think like I have a
mm,
marketing background, so I think about like a customer
mm,
journey, almost like that,
mm,
right? So
mm,
if you think about it, like what happens typically is that a parent goes on a journey and then they take the kids,
mm,
they get diagnosed, and then at that point of diagnosis, well, that's a step in the journey,
mm,
isn't it? So
mm,
I'm sure the psychologists, psychiatrists, etc., that are involved in the diagnostic process, I'm sure that they might have some of their own resources, but I think that that's
mm,
crucial. That's a key point
mm.
where at diagnosis stage they go, but here you go. This is the situation.
Yeah,
Here's a link. Here's a pack, of
yeah,
resources.
yeah.
That's so important that the right
So,
practitioners do that in a standardized way. Maybe they need to recognize
so
bodies.
you've absolutely nailed it. And in an ideal world, before getting this job, as a parent, I had
Mm.
no idea about the risks. And at the time, we weren't doing swing lessons, and I just sort of parked it in the too hard basket. Um, so understanding that actually this is something that needs to be prioritized, getting that aquatic education. I think overlaying it too is that autism swims worldwide. So the way that we
Oh
support
wow. Okay.
Yes, the way we support our Australian providers. So we essentially we try and amplify the effect by reaching out in those service providers so that they reach their communities. And we take that approach because we believe that empowering local providers can help support local contexts and can be culturally relevant to where you are. So the way that an aquatic provider will offer their services in Australia is going to be really different to the way that it's offered in Southeast Asia versus the UK versus the US. So that's really important to us is that it's culturally relevant within your local context. But just adding to that point around that, that you're 100% right. There is this really big gap around the awareness piece. And going back to where we started 10 years ago when Eric Gleason was, looking at our research, there wasn't anything there. And there's definitely still is areas where it can be improved. But yeah, so if anyone listening is in a research background and wants to do a research paper, get in contact. You can put my email address at the end of this.
Sounds good. Yeah, exactly. And then I go to all right, let's go to getting the message out. It's all kind of related. I
Mm,
think that the from my own personal experience,
mm,
I have to admit I'm the middle-aged guy that got into TikTok, so I'm a sucker for it. And that doom scrolling. Oh my God, it's that algorithm is so effective. The
mm.
reason I'm mentioning it though, jokes aside, is that after my diagnosis, I got interested in that, and I got interested
Yeah.
in the subjects of unmasking and the neurodiverse community and
Mm,
what it means, all of that. And
mm,
it's just one example, but TikTok, from a social media perspective. I've
mm,
never felt more understood. I found it so
mm,
neuro-affirming because it would be either,
mm,
sometimes it's practitioners, but often it's the
mm.
individual that goes, "Hey, me
Yeah.
too. This is how I live
Yeah.
life." And you go,
Yeah.
"Ah, oh, right,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Everything's all
Totally.
right."
Yeah.
Like it's so powerful. There's quiet
Yeah.
moments of social media. I actually interviewed
Yeah.
a an ADHD a young lady called Laurie Faulkner on a podcast, and
Mm,
and I'm mentioning her because that was just one example of micro pieces of content where it helped me
mm.
help myself feel understood.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
and so I'm mentioning that because I think social media is absolutely a thing because that's what happens.
Yeah.
Like people might search, like it's becoming.
Yeah.
Google is one search mechanism, but people
Mm.
are searching, especially younger generations. They're
Yeah.
searching on TikTok and Instagram,
Yeah.
etc., for a subject. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
Of course, Google and all your traditional things.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
but then there's also AI. Like we're starting to get inquiries at our own business,
Mm.
Steadway, through AI. They'll go, who's a provider on the Central Coast or in
Yeah.
Newcastle? And I go, ding, Steadway is a recommended local provider. And
Yes.
they go, bloody hell,
Yes.
the world's changing. So
Yeah.
I think that, you've got all those entry point things that can happen via lots of
Yeah.
mechanisms. And then it's a question of,
Yeah.
well, what do you do with that, right? Because it can be
Yes.
micro content, it can be e-learning, it can be
Yeah.
YouTube videos, it can be resource toolkits like you've got. In my
Yeah.
opinion, as a sort of marketeering kind of guy, I kind of feel like it needs to be all of it, doesn't it?
And there's just the potential to educate the communities is so
Hmm.
much, but it really just illustrates just your point. And I too am an avid TikToker as well. I dabble, um, but just to that point around the community and community standards expecting more.
Mm,
Uh, because of incredible content creators and influencers and people within our market who've been brave enough to
mhm,
share their story and share why the types of things that they're after and they're seeking support in. So that's
mm,
definitely a benefit, or at least I think it's helped move the aquatic industry along and sort of lit a fire around to say you do have a
mm,
burning platform now. If you don't act now,
mm,
um, you're leaving behind a very vocal and a very loud and not a minority. That's the rates of diagnoses, especially not just for children, but also
mm,
looking at adults as well,
mhm,
it's there. So
mm, mm, mm.
definitely.
Well, let me go super pragmatic and wind back right to the
Yeah.
beginning of the conversation. Let's imagine I'm going to a swimming lesson,
Yeah.
and I've got a sensitivity towards loud noises and lights, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just out of interest, what are in the minutiae of things? What are some of the
Yeah.
strategies that some of these swim centers might
Yeah.
put in place to accommodate that?
Yeah, love that question. So we can look at lots of things. I'd take that step back and I would look at so if I'm a parent looking for if I know my child has a if I understand that the sensory profile of my child, I would, if I was looking for a swim center, I would first of all I'd look at their website, look at their way that they're advertising. Do they have neuro-affirming language? How are they talking about children like mine? Are they talking about them, with outdated language like children with special needs, or are they looking at, supporting children who have meeting their individual needs and their support requirements? Then I'd be thinking about, do I give them a call and how do they, when I'm asking or talking to the front desk staff, or any of the staff rather, how are they answering or helping my concerns that I might have? What are the suggestions that they're offering? Um, an excellent service will do things like provide a social story, or if not a social story, basic things like updated imagery on the website, which actually shows what the pool looks like or where things are. Um, they might even offer something like a tour beforehand to just a familiarization, where it's just low pressure or no pressure with this is where these are the change rooms, these are the bathrooms, this is the pool. Then, when it actually comes to the lesson itself, they will introduce me to a swim instructor. That swim instructor will engage and develop rapport with my child. Um, that swim instructor, as much as possible, and I put a big asterisk next to as much as possible because life happens, and as we know, in the swimming industry, it's full of casual employees, which rosters and the rest of things. Um, but as much as possible, that instructor is consistent. And if they are not there each week, we get notified in advance and a plan is put together. When I'm there, there are things like visual cues and visual place cards or visual supports rather to be able to set out expectations. But then around those sort of more sensory elements. So I'll give the example of my child. So I've got three children. They all attend the same swim centre. This swim centre is definitely more on that mainstream, medium to larger size. Um, but my swim center are just sensational. They call me in advance and they let me know. They'll say, actually today, Antoinette, there's going to be a lot of people here because they're here for a special lesson. Is that okay? Do you want to give a heads up? They've deliberately scheduled me at 5 p.m. on a Wednesday because for some reason 5 p.m. is the time that no one comes. It's either 4:30 or 5:30, but that spot there is really quiet. So that helps with the sort of the noise and what's around us. But they also know that when they schedule my child in a group class, that they look at compatibilities, who else is within that class. They look at teacher experience, and they really look at it from an individualized person up approach. They didn't shut my inquiry down from the start, and that is one of the big
Yes.
things.
Yes.
Where it's actually, no, this center's not for you. Rather, they said, do you know what? This is what we can offer. How can we work together? What can we do? So, is it perfect? No, it's not. The meltdowns that my son experiences, for example, he hates the heat. In wintertime, it is the worst because they put that center on like a sauna and he just it's just this big reaction that he'll have. And so he'll be there very loud and he'll let people know around him that he's uncomfortable. Um, I see that as him displaying his discomfort. Other people around might see that as him being disrespectful or having behavioral issues. I've got my little finger quotation
Oh, I know
marks
what you
here.
mean, but every behavior is a communication, right? That's the philosophy.
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
Correct. But the swim center staff always meet with just kindness and gentleness.
Mhm.
They'll offer things like, would you like to wait in the air-conditioned waiting room? Or the staff will meet where well, the swim staff will meet where they're at. So they would be the too long didn't read version of that is, is the center looking to work with you to work with your individual needs? And how flexible are they in helping?
Love it. Love it. I mean, even just hearing this conversation and hearing you speak, I find that affirming in itself, right? It's really
Mhm.
nice. So I hope that parents and practitioners out here can go have a sigh of relief and go, well, it's lovely that this educational and empowering approach exists from you guys as a peak body,
Mm,
and that is disseminating ultimately amongst communities and
mm.
local centres. So it's just a breath of fresh air. It really is.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
No, I
Yeah,
love it.
look, and And look, and it's just, we exist because organizations like yours support us in terms of, providing us a platform to be able to get our message
Mm.
out. So
Mm.
that's a huge thanks as well for the
Oh,
reciprocal support.
you're absolutely welcome. So tell us about some of the exciting things. So, I've thoroughly loved the
Yeah.
conversation, but I suppose I always like to ask that wrap up question. What does the
Mm.
next 12 months, 2 years look like for Autism Swim, and what are those innovation things that you really think are going to be, groundbreaking and new and fun? Like, what's the kind of strategic outlook?
Yes, so you have just asked me the right question at the right time. So
Ooh.
we are about to launch, we're minutes away from launching our new Neuro-Inclusive Aquatics Academy. And essentially it's we've gone through and overhauled and refreshed our content that has been developed over the last 10 years and really looked at it through a neuro-affirming lens. It includes resources that has up to the minute language, because as we know, language evolves and changes, along with strategies and the way that we help guide and support. So that will be launching. And along with the launch, what's great for this community is that parents can view and access more resources. We're offering our resources that are broken down or chunked down versions of our certification. So you don't, parents are able to take those bite-sized snippets of things that are going to be relevant to them and their context. So, for example, a parent might want to do the PDA and aquatics module, or they might want to do just the behavior support module, the communication module, and they're accessed at a more affordable price point as well, being that it is a smaller chunk down version. So Neuro Inclusive Aquatics Academy is, like I said, minutes away from launching, which is great. In addition to that, I mentioned the Dippers program. One of my key goals that I'm working on this year is to find a way that we can offer the Dippers program. My vision is wherever there's water, I would love there to be a community aquatics program that can help support. We're very privileged. You mentioned you're the Central Coast. I'm the Northern Beaches of Sydney, so very privileged to live along the coastline of Australia. But not everyone lives on the coastline. There's lots of people who live in great places where there are, creeks, dams, backyard pools, aquatic centres. So I would love to establish a community aquatics program where essentially wherever there's water, there is a guided and supported way that participants can generalize their skills in different aquatic contexts. But in addition to that, have an opportunity to feel that they can belong in a space as well. So being connected in a group way that is meaningful and relevant to them. Um, I do firmly believe that having the power of either experienced aquatic providers and or allied health professionals to help lead those groups is incredibly powerful, and offering it in a way that is accessible in their local communities is just would be incredible. So watch this space for an offering hopefully to come out.
That is amazing. You got me all fired up. I love it. Fantastic. Well, what we'll make sure to include all of those, various links for the particular resources, etc., in the show notes, so that people that want to, click on it, whether it be the general website, probably get a link to the academy at some point over the coming weeks and put it in there too. And maybe some of these particular, if you feel like there are any
Yeah.
specific toolkits that would be very beneficial, we'll make sure to put a particular highlight to those. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic,
Love that.
fantastic.
Sounds like a wonderful idea.
Well, look, I mean, for the audience listening, sorry, as Antoinette and I have talked about, you often fall upon these things through recommendation, whether it be parent to parent, provider to provider. So, if you've enjoyed the conversation today, the only way that it's that the good message spreads is by sharing. There's a wonderful network effect. So, please do, share this episode with anyone that you might know in the life that would benefit from it. I think it could be transformative, for various people of all sorts of ages across Australia. So thank you, Antoinette, for coming on the podcast today. So,
Thank
didn't
you
it?
so much for having me, and ditto. Please to be generous in sharing, and also very happy to include an email address as well. So if you want to get in contact with us, I read pretty much all the emails in our inboxes. So would love to interact and say hi. So
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, Antoinette,
thank
thank you
you.
again. Thank you again. And we'll put the links to Autism Swim. My name's Chris Hall from Steadway. And you can find this episode at steadway.com.au. Thanks everyone for listening. Appreciate your time.